Today on Notsam Wrestling, what is Solo Sikoa's role in this new bloodline, and what does MFT even mean? Rhea Ripley relinquishes her title. Did The Rock just tell us when he's coming back? And are fans going to turn on Cody Rhodes? This is Notsam Wrestling. Hope you're all ready for another massive wrestling week as the WWE draft is quickly approaching. And I toyed with the idea, what are we doing here on Notsam Wrestling? Are we going to do a fantasy draft? But right now, there is so much going on in the world of WWE that there's too much to cover before we get into the draft. I feel like the draft, we're going to kind of realize, beginning to middle of this week. Oh, we're in it. Oh, come Friday, the whole thing is starting. So I don't know. Maybe we'll meet midweek to talk about the draft. But first, we got to talk about the fact that Rhea Ripley is no longer the women's world champion. Of all the luck, of all the times for it to happen, immediately after WrestleMania, we're just revving up for whatever that next program is. You have to admit that at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley ascended to another level, and we knew she would. It's what the match was designed to do, and the match didn't disappoint. I mean, night one of the highlights, absolutely, was Rhea Ripley's entrance into that stadium with the band playing and everything. Every bit of her felt like the massive star that she's become. Then the victory over Becky Lynch, and now her taking her spot as, without question, the number one superstar on the roster. Of course, the Monday after WrestleMania, we get the backstage interaction between Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. Apparently, at some point, an injury occurred, and Rhea Ripley shows up on Monday Night Raw and announces that she can't compete. She's not cleared. She'll be out for an undisclosed amount of time. And I think the reason it's an undisclosed amount of time is that if you listen to CM Punk on Ariel Helwani's show, he was talking about his injury and this idea that it's not just a matter of, okay, you'll come back exactly when you're cleared to come back. It's a matter of, okay, when will you be cleared to come back? Okay, business-wise, when makes sense for you to come back? If Rhea's going to be out for 3 months and there's a 4-month story to tell, then maybe it's better that Rhea be out for 4 months, and then the big comeback happens. I don't know, but, I think options are just going to be kept open. There was some question as to why she had to relinquish the championship. This era of a champion must defend the title every 30 days is the product of a bygone era. Nobody thinks that way anymore. I think since Brock Lesnar won the WWE championship, that idea that a champion has to defend their title every 30 days went out the window because it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, look what we just had. I think that's what people look at, right? You look at Roman Reigns, and I don't think he defended the title last year even once between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. And maybe you'll say, well, Roman Reigns is special. Roman Reigns is the tribal chief. He's the head of the table. The rules don't apply when you are responsible for everything under the sun in the world of WWE. That might be true, but I think more likely is that it's going to be that much sweeter, right? When you think about the comeback, because that's what you have to start thinking about. You have to go like, this sucks. Rhea Ripley, at the highest point that she's ever been at in her career, gets put on the shelf in a way that you couldn't have expected. It sucks. How do you make the best of it? Well, you tell the best story. And I think that first of all, it's really, really interesting that this all happened just as you're seemingly about to hit the gas on a story that revolves around Rhea Ripley injuring Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan, well before WrestleMania, returned to the WWE and announced that she was on the Revenge Tour, where she's only there to get revenge on Rhea Ripley. And whatever she has to do to get into the ring with Rhea Ripley, she will do it to make sure that she can inflict furious vengeance upon Rhea Ripley. She blames Rhea for injuring her. She blames Rhea for taking months away from her career. Well, before we even get the Liv Morgan-Rhea Ripley match, I mean, the positive spin on it is this story that would have been a story that, was however many months is now extended even further. Because what's happened is, totally by mistake, but this is where the cards lay, Rhea Ripley is in the same position that Liv Morgan is in, meaning that several months from now, when Rhea Ripley comes back from her injury, she's going to be the one that is then in the position that Liv Morgan was in a week ago, right? She's going to be the one that's going, okay, good. Your revenge tour is over. Mine's just beginning because now I'm here to get the revenge. And by the way, everything that you claim I took away from you, you took it away from me tenfold. I was at the highest of highs. I was the women's world champion. I had beaten Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. You've never sniffed air like that, Morgan. And this is the story that we're telling. And I think that this is where we're going because instead of going real life, right, and having Liv Morgan kind of feel a certain type of way about injuring Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan came out still living the gimmick, brother, still full on in character, going, yeah, this is awesome. I'm so glad I did that. This is fantastic news. This is everything I could have wanted. Now I just got to get your title while you're gone. And it's like, yeah, use this. Now, I think that the real reason that I'm optimistic about the Rhea Ripley return, because when I look at this, I go, as much as you don't want anybody to get injured, and as much as, quite frankly, I don't want a week of television to go by without Rhea Ripley on it, let alone months of television to go by without Rhea Ripley on it, there isn't a person watching the show that doesn't have some kind of affinity or affection for Rhea Ripley. Everybody loves Rhea Ripley. Everybody sees the star power in Rhea Ripley. Not one person wondered why she was the one to beat Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Everybody sees it now. Everybody's on board. So the fact is that she's going to be prone for such a comeback run. All of this equity that she's built goes nowhere. And if anything, it gets built upon. Because the potential, you're going to look at people who do succeed post-WrestleMania. And you're going to realize that there was so much potential for her to do. And you're not going to think, wow, what if it hadn't panned out? What if it, you're only going to think about the positives. It could have been this. It could have been that. And so that's going to build. That legend is going to build and build and build. And when she finally comes back, it's going to be an absolute explosion. If on WWE, I'm keeping Rhea Ripley completely off television. I'm not having people mention her after the next, couple weeks. Of course, first week, this week, the week after, you go, yeah, Rhea Ripley vacated the title. Now I have Rhea Ripley's title. But eventually, don't even bring it up anymore. Because when that moment hits, when this is my brutality gets played throughout whatever arena or stadium it gets played throughout. Could be Money in the Bank, could be SummerSlam, could be an episode of Raw or SmackDown. The place is going to come unhinged and go nuts. And I think I realized why I'm so optimistic about Rhea Ripley potentially coming back in the best way possible after this extremely unfortunate injury. And it goes back to the same thing I said about why the Solo Sikoa taking over the Bloodline thing works so well. Who is the person who at the end of the day is responsible for all of the creative on the show? Who's their head of creative right now? It's Triple H. Who would you say has the best return from an injury ever? Who knows better than anybody else how to end up on this shelf for months, only to come back in an even bigger position than when you left? He lived it. I sat there at Madison Square Garden in 2002. I want to say, when Triple H returned. And by the way, it wasn't exactly the same scenarios I'm setting up for Rhea Ripley because those music videos had played, those vignettes had played. You too, It's a Beautiful Day. And you saw Triple H training, and you saw Triple H going through surgery, and you heard from Triple H how much this meant to him and this acknowledgement of how far he's come and how far he still wants to go. To the point where, as a fan, you realized the character of this person. You realized who they were. You realized he is one of us. And you couldn't help but be chomping at the bit to see this guy return. So when it was announced that he'd be back at Madison Square Garden, and the only thing that he came back to do was stand in the ring and announce that he was going to be in the Royal Rumble later that month, they saved it all the way to the end of the show. And to this day, I've sat in Madison Square Garden. I was there when John Cena returned at the Rumble. I was there for WrestleMania 20. I've been to Madison Square Garden countless times. I was at Madison Square Garden for CM Punk's first match back in a WWE ring in 10 years. Triple H still has the loudest ovation that I've ever heard in that building from his return to injury. So now, Triple H realizes what he's got on his hands. The WWE realizes what they've got on their hands. A game-changing superstar in Rhea Ripley. And I think that you're gonna see some of that magic used on Rhea so that when she does come back, it will be an earth-shattering return to the WWE that will, throw the entire division on its head. Triple H's injury return ended up with him going into the Rumble, winning the Rumble, going to WrestleMania, winning the championship. We're talking about going into WrestleMania 18. I think that he's aware of that, and even if he wasn't, everybody who's watching is aware of how important Rhea Ripley is. So I can't wait. I can't wait for the return. And I love that when she went out, it wasn't happy. It wasn't sad. It was angry. It wasn't, hey, you know what? I got knocked down, but I'll get up again. You're never going to keep me down. No. It wasn't, it's never a good time to get injured, but with your support, I think I can get back stronger than ever. No. It was rage. It was fury. It was anger. It was, I'll be back, and when I come back, I'll be back for blood. It was awesome, is what it was. And I love the idea of a new women's champion being crowned. But just looming over that women's champion is this notion that we'll all have, whether it's mentioned on TV or not, that at some point, mommy will return. Like a horror movie. Just realizing, don't say mommy's name 3 times, because she will, at some point, make her appearance known. And when that happens, nobody's safe. Not Liv Morgan, not whoever is holding the champion, nobody. And we're all going to be along for that ride. I can't wait. Speaking of being along for the ride, how about as the bloodline turns? Just continuing on and on, way beyond WrestleMania. We all wondered if WrestleMania would kind of at least put a pause on the bloodline. Not at all. Solo Sikoa and his MFT on SmackDown, leaving more questions than answers, but I think keeping everybody hooked. So Paul Heyman is the first person from the bloodline that we see on SmackDown. Of course, no Roman, but no Jay, he's on Raw, and no Jimmy at all. Jimmy is, who knows what happened to him after the attack of last week. Paul Heyman is out there in the parking lot, and Solo Sikoa shows up. Solo Sikoa's got a different vibe. Solo Sikoa is not there to enforce. He's not there to follow orders anymore. He shows up, and he's got the mock turtleneck on. He's got the blazer on. He's got the chain on. Just looking like $1 million. And Paul Heyman goes, nice threads. But this is the genius of Paul Heyman. He does it in such a way where he's surprised. He does respect the ensemble, but is also worried. He's nervous about the fact that Solo Sikoa is dressing like a leader. I think that's the way I interpreted it. That there's no way to get this twisted. When you see Solo Sikoa roll up in a suit, we've never seen him roll up in a suit. The guy doesn't even really wear shoes. So the fact that he rolls up in a suit, you go, oh, this is different. And Paul Heyman, I think, doesn't want to acknowledge, ironically, what's going on. It's in Paul Heyman's best interest to keep everything copacetic with the bloodline. You know, we saw what happened last time Roman Reigns was off TV. Paul Heyman would show up. He hasn't shaved. The gray was coming out in his hair. This Paul Heyman character that we've come to know and love, he's got a hell of a meal ticket in being the wise man to the tribal chief and the head of the table, Roman Reigns. But when Roman Reigns isn't there, what does Paul Heyman have? What lifeboat does he have? Well, he's got the bloodline. He's got what he thought was Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso, but is now apparently Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga. So when Solo comes in, and Paul Heyman knows that if Solo doesn't want to listen to Paul Heyman, there's nothing that Paul can do to stop it. When Solo shows up looking like a leader, it's a little scary for Paul. Tama Tonga rolls through. And it was really interesting because Solo Sikoa goes, my MFT, and gives Tama Tonga a hug. My MFT. Lots of people wildly speculating, which, if you're watching the product, you should be speculating wildly, as to what MFT stands for. A lot of people assuming that the MF in MFT stands for MFin. I'll say that. Some people think MFT could stand for My Family Tree, but he says My MFT. So it wouldn't be My Family Tree, because then he would be saying My Family Tree. This is MFT, is what he would say, because the My is baked in. So there's no way that M can stand for My, because he says My MFT. So that doesn't make any sense to me. At one point, now you could say, this is my MFin tree, right? Like you're almost like not saying family in there. You're saying MFin tree to go like, yeah, family tree. He could be, right? Because at one point he's looking at his thumb, because then they go into gorilla position without Tama Tonga there. And I think Paul Heyman asks, will your MFT be with us, or something like that. And Solo looks at his thumb and goes ahead. So then when he's looking at his thumb, I'm like, oh, maybe MFT means MF and thumb. You know, that could be what MFT stands for, MF and thumb. I mean, it could be MF and Tongan, right? Tama Tonga. He's a Tongan person. We're seeing the Samoans and the Tongans come together now in the bloodline on television. But I don't know. My MF and Tama? I don't know. But the presentation of Solo Sikoa is perfect. Solo Sikoa, and I really noticed this as they were coming out of gorilla position. When Paul Heyman is talking to Solo Sikoa, and he's pleading with Solo. He's trying to get through to him. He's saying, Solo, these decisions will be yours to make. Every decision will be yours to make one day. But today is not that day. And it goes back to what we were talking about on the podcast last week. That I think that, in my opinion, all of these Solo Sikoa actions that we're seeing play out ultimately are revolving around the fact that before WrestleMania, Roman and the Wise Man both said that Solo Sikoa is next in line to be the tribal chief. And again, we thought this was mainly a shot at Jimmy, but in reality, it was a setup for Solo. I think that's all it is. I think if you're looking beyond that, you might be digging too deep. I think it's a matter of Solo Sikoa taking action into his own hands and deciding that they need a new leader now. And since he's next in line, he's going to take the lead. But after he says that, after Paul Heyman says, these will be your decisions one day, and the camera follows Solo into the arena, bum, 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 and Solo Sikoa walks out, you can see both in the way that Solo is shot, like everything is obviously intentional, in the way Solo is shot and the way Paul Heyman positions himself. The camera kind of comes around Solo, and it's just slightly from below. But Paul Heyman is back and to the right. I wish it was back and to the left. Back and to the right. Back and to the right of Solo Sikoa. And so what you end up with is this clean shot of Solo in all his glory with this suit on, walking to the ring in full take charge mode. And then as you kind of widen out, you see Paul Heyman kind of slinking next to him for the first time in a long time, completely unsure of himself. It's really cool to see all that detail be put into it. And Paul Heyman starts again. And he's hyping up the Bloodline as he does, and the fans start chanting, "We want Roman. We want Roman." And isn't it amazing? Isn't it remarkable that after a week, 2 weeks after WrestleMania, Roman went in the biggest villain there is. And people instantly, the minute the title is off that guy, instantly are ready to give that guy credit for what he did. I said this months ago, that once the title is off Roman, you're not going to have a choice. Roman is too good. Once he is no longer the person holding the title hostage, there's no place for him to go but to be a babyface. And this is not a suffer and succotash type of babyface. This is not a pour dog food on Baron Corbin type of babyface. This is the tribal chief version of Roman Reigns type of babyface. This is an acknowledgement of all the stuff that you were saying as a heel. We had to boo you because you were the one saying it, but it was all true. And us just celebrating the fact that greatness is here. And Roman feeling secure in that. All you really have to do, because here's the thing about Roman Reigns. Everything that he says about himself is true in terms of his level of greatness, in terms of his level of accomplishment, in terms of his ability to win matches. Everything that this character has ever said is true. When he talks about being the person responsible for the house, it is essentially true. When he talks about how big his family tree is, and he's the one that's responsible for bringing home the lion's share of the income, it is true that he's the one responsible for finding spots for his cousins and nephews. It is true that nobody has a title reign in the modern era that will ever come close to what he did for 1,316 days. All of it is true. What makes Roman Reigns a villain is his inherent insecurity and the fact that he needs people around him, including the audience, to acknowledge him. That he needs everybody around him to fall in line and to kind of bow at his feet. Roman has never even betrayed anybody. He hasn't betrayed anybody. Everybody betrays Roman Reigns. Whether it's going back to Seth Rollins, whether it's Jey Uso, at one point Jimmy Uso, Sami Zayn, everybody. That's why you're waiting for The Rock to betray this guy. Everybody betrays Roman Reigns. Not just from the perspective of Roman Reigns, but you can justify it. You could say it's because of the way he treated people, but you would never say Roman turned on Sami Zayn. At the Royal Rumble in 2023, Sami Zayn turned on Roman Reigns. It made him a babyface, but he's still the one who did the turning. So all we've seen is Roman Reigns tout accomplishments that are legitimate and be betrayed by people that he's trying to put into higher positions. There's nothing about any of that behavior that has to change to make this character a hero. All that has to change is he can't demand respect. He just has to accept it when it naturally comes. And he can't treat people poorly. He just has to trust in them to do the right thing. Those two just shifts of the knob. And all of a sudden, this character is a complete babyface. He's Hogan. He's whatever you want him to be. And I think that's all you're going to need. And the crowd knows that. The crowd knows what he did. The crowd knows that as you look at sold out arena after sold out arena after sold out arena, as you look at The Rock coming back to be a part of the WWE more regularly, as you look at storytelling as a whole changing in every perceivable way in terms of presentation for the better, fans know that the nucleus of all of it is Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And Roman Reigns losing the title has allowed us to step out of that and go, yeah, we can appreciate that now. And it's already happening less than 2 weeks after he lost the title, as We Want Roman is ringing through the arena. Paul Heyman is getting ready to respond to these requests. You know he's going to say how badly he wants Roman too. It almost brings him to tears. Paul Heyman, the wise man, he loves his tribal chief. But Solo, just like the week before, snatches the microphone away from Paul Heyman before he can rain compliments down on Roman Reigns. Because Solo doesn't want to hear about anybody else being the tribal chief. That's when the fans start booing him. And this is the only spot that I would say we need to be a little careful here. Because booing bad guys is fun. It is great to boo bad guys. To boo bad guys so much that they can't even talk is fun. Roman Reigns, when he grabbed a microphone and started to get booed, he would say, either you stop or I'm leaving. I've fulfilled my obligation. What you don't want to do in that position is to be anything like Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio's whole character is based around the fact that for some reason this guy thinks that he's super badass and tough. He's got people around him that are for whatever reason agreeing with him, but we all know that it's not true. He's a weaselly bad guy. That's not Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa is graduating to this place where all the control and ability that he had as the enforcer now graduates up to being in this leadership position. If Solo is getting booed, he should just stand and allow it to happen. There shouldn't be any Solo gets cut off by the boos. He should be more powerful than that. It's okay for it to happen once. It's fun. But you can't have fun segments with Solo Sikoa, especially when they're leading to Kevin Owens coming out of Bloody Mess, right? The idea is that Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga, when linked, are a real credible threat. If Dominic Mysterio was trashing Roman Reigns and Roman Reigns comes back, the idea is that Roman Reigns is not really threatened by Dominic Mysterio. It's just going to be fun to watch Dominic get his. I think Solo Sikoa is a different conversation because what you want is you want people to doubt whether Roman Reigns can beat Solo Sikoa. You at least want to believe that the character of Roman Reigns may doubt himself because of how good Solo Sikoa is, especially when he's got his MFT with him, Tama Tonga. So Tama Tonga brings Kevin Owens out to the ring, and Kevin Owens is a bloody mess, and Paul Heyman clearly has no idea what's going on. Kevin tries to fight back. They end up getting the better of him, and Solo and Tama put their ones up, and Paul Heyman is just brilliantly cowering in a corner with his one kind of shaking there in the air. And this is great. The idea of Paul Heyman being a wise man who is held hostage is beautiful. That Roman Reigns, and it's going to allow Paul Heyman to actually potentially be a good guy, be a babyface, because we're going to want to see Roman Reigns show up and free Paul Heyman. Now, Paul Heyman, in every nature, every fiber of that character's being, is a villain. So, I mean, yeah, it's an exciting idea to me. As much as, like, Paul Heyman turning babyface and Roman Reigns and Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso and Paul Heyman being a babyface team that's going to take out the new Bloodline is just fun and awesome and maybe good enough that you don't have to rethink it until, you're blue in the face. There could also be some fun in Paul Heyman appearing to be held hostage, but when Roman Reigns comes back to save him, he realizes it was a ruse, and that Paul Heyman is also on board with Solo Sikoa being the tribal chief right now. We get the impression that Tama Tonga, his MFT, maybe, could be more dangerous than initially thought, because Nick Aldis shows Paul Heyman that Tama Tonga drove his car into Kevin Owens' car. That's how this brawl started. And Paul Heyman is just sitting there going, this was not authorized. This was not authorized. You have to understand, this was not authorized. Paul Heyman here is not worried about what Nick Aldis thinks of him. Paul Heyman is worried about the fact that he's clearly lost control of the Bloodline. You hear that when he's talking to Solo Sikoa. I'm not trying to piss you off. I swear. We also don't know for sure why Kevin Owens is the one being hunted right now. Maybe they're going enemy by enemy of the Bloodline to take people out. Maybe this is a way to drag Sammy back into it. Maybe, I don't know. But I feel like we're just going to keep looking for answers, keep being presented new questions, and watch as this new chapter in the Bloodline continues. Speaking of chapters, The Rock did something very interesting on Instagram, and I got inspired. I'm going to have a special podcast coming out later this week, within a couple of days. It'll be on YouTube, Notsam Wrestling YouTube, and the audio podcast feed. But The Rock has kind of closed the book on chapter 1 of The Final Boss. He's been posting a lot on social media, and he keeps talking about this being the end of chapter 1, which is great for two reasons. Number one, it gives you bookends on where we're at with the character. But number two, he doesn't close the book. The implication is heavy that we have not seen the end of not only The Rock, but this version of The Rock, the final boss. So I've decided to go in and do a full recap and analysis of the first chapter of the final boss. So that'll be a special bonus show that'll be available to everybody for free. That'll be up later this week. But I bring it up to say that beyond talking about this being the end of the first chapter, The Rock did something that was even more intriguing. It was just this little nugget that was piped into one of his Instagram videos. He was in the gym, I guess, just feeling appreciative for everything that had happened, and was reflecting on WrestleMania. And he was congratulating everybody involved. He was congratulating his cousin Roman Reigns on the title run that he had. He was congratulating Cody Rhodes on becoming the new champion and where Cody's off to. He congratulated Seth Rollins, and he called Seth Rollins the MVP of WrestleMania, which I think is true. Not only because he was a key component in 3 different matches, which is the main event of Night 1 tag team match, the world title Drew McIntyre match, and to me, the linchpin of the storytelling in the main event between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. I mean, that was it. Apparently, he was doing it while injured as well. I mean, you talk about somebody who deserves every flower you could possibly give him, that's Seth Rollins. But what I found the most intriguing is Rock saying, that was last year's WrestleMania. I now have my sights set on the next WrestleMania, but we'll get to that later. And he kept going, and I go, wait, the next WrestleMania? So you're telling us the ideas are already starting, and that we're going to get The Rock at next year's WrestleMania. Now, here's the question. Is that to say that The Rock's next match will be at WrestleMania? Because some people are thinking, okay, we can do Cody Rhodes versus Rock at SummerSlam, and then Roman Reigns versus Rock at WrestleMania. Some people are going Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Rock could go into War Games at Survivor Series and have the new Bloodline versus the old Bloodline with the Rock on the side of the new Bloodline, and then do Rock versus Roman at WrestleMania. Or he keeps talking about how he's a long-term player. We could end up seeing Cody versus Rock at WrestleMania 41 and Roman versus Rock at WrestleMania 42. Maybe The Rock is in no rush. Maybe The Rock just sees himself as a WrestleMania guy. And if that means that at least for the next 2 years, starting around January and going through Q1, if quarter one in WWE means that the final boss is back to tell us a new story, oh my God. It's almost like I almost want to say, don't spoil us. Don't give us Rock at SummerSlam. Don't give us Rock at Survivor Series. Just wait. Just make it a tradition. For the next 2 or 3 years, the first quarter of every year, we get the final boss back to tell us a new story. And next year it leads to Cody, and the year after that it leads to Roman Reigns. Can you believe we're sitting here talking about like 2-3 years worth of storylines? That's the way wrestling should be. It's awesome, but yeah, I think the idea of The Rock just being somebody who is consistently there, making quarter one enormous for WWE. And then just as you're like, oh, I'm ready to take a breath, quarter one starts up again, right? Because you go like, oh my gosh, going from WrestleMania to Backlash and the draft. You're like, okay, that's going to take us there. And then coming off of Backlash, you're already getting into May, June. Here comes King of the Ring. Here comes the new Money in the Bank. The new Money in the Bank is going to twist everything around too. You're going to have storylines that are built coming off of that going into SummerSlam. Boom. Coming out of SummerSlam, you got your fall. Fall is going to lead into War Games, which again is going to be one of those stories that are told over the course of months. Post War Games, you're already talking about the Royal Rumble, which is what? Quarter one, which means the final boss is back. I love it. It just got a lot of potential, is all I'm saying. I do also, before we move on, I want to tell you that not only will there be a video all about the final boss going up this week on the Not Sam Wrestling YouTube channel, as well as the Not Sam Wrestling podcast feed, but if you go to the Not Sam Wrestling YouTube channel, you can see video from our live show in Philadelphia of the segment with R-Truth coming out, and not only being hysterical, not only saying words that he's not supposed to say, but also getting real and bearing it all and kind of telling the story of how serious his injury was and why this is such an important time for him. It's a remarkable piece of footage that I would recommend you guys go check out at the end of this podcast. And then I also wanted to say that we may, not only will we have to cover the draft potentially later this week, but you're probably wondering why we're not talking about AEW Dynasty on this week's episode. It's because I'm recording this episode before AEW Dynasty. So I don't want to guess. I don't want to speculate, because by the time you hear and see this, it will have already happened. But I couldn't stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning doing this and still have it out. I want to make sure this is out Monday morning. So that's why there's no coverage of that, but I'll figure out a way either later this week or on the Patreon or next week where we'll get into what happened at AEW Dynasty. But there's a very interesting kind of, I don't know, narrative that's been going around. And maybe it's just more, a certain section on the internet. You definitely don't hear it in venues. But it feels like there are a lot of people that are talking, speculating wildly, wondering, are fans going to turn on Cody Rhodes? And it's just really kind of a you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Because, there were people saying if Cody loses at WrestleMania, he'll lose the fans. And now that Cody's won, there are people saying if Cody loses, now that Cody's won, he's going to lose the fans. Cody's not going to lose the fans. It's a different time. He's a different type of cat. There's a connection that Cody Rhodes has with the fans. And because what's interesting about Cody Rhodes is that as much as he is a classic wrestling babyface, he's coming out there, he's smiling, he's telling you what you want to hear. You're not going to catch him in a bad mood unless, The Rock bloodies him in a parking lot. But generally speaking, he's just a classic good guy wrestler. The connection that he has with the fans is there is something inherent in him that is authentic. And no matter how, traditional good guy wrestler he is, there is still an ingrained authenticity because people know how he got there. People know where he came from. The fact that he wasn't a handpicked main eventer, he wasn't a chosen one. The fact that you do 2 minutes of history on this guy and you realize that the reason that he's in the position that he's in is because he busted his ass and he changed the entire industry. Cody Rhodes changed the wrestling industry. And that's how he got to the position that he's in. When he left WWE, he was Stardust. He had to go make a name for himself. He was so successful in making a name for himself independently without the machine that he was able to be a key part in making the first nationally televised wrestling organization to be competitive with WWE in 2 decades. And then left, came to WWE and hasn't had to look back since, whether it's merchandise, whether it's reception from the audience, whether it's just ticket sales in general. He's a guy who moves the needle because people get it. Kids, they see him and they get it. Adults, they see him and they get it. You can't look at that guy and not think he deserves to be where he's at. And every step of the way, the course of action is taken that furthers that point. Whether it's the Hell in a Cell match with the torn pec, the stuff of legends now. Whether it's the fact that he lost at WrestleMania 39. If he were to be handed everything, he would have won. And I said this then, and I'll say it now. If he had won at WrestleMania 39, he would be at risk of losing fans. He may have had to become a villain. But the fact that he lost at WrestleMania 39, the fact that he maintained fan support throughout the entire year, which a lot of people thought he wasn't going to be able to do, the fact that as a good guy, as a hero, he was able to walk into a stadium full of people in Philadelphia of all cities and still be cheered. And the fact that he was able to give us the most feel-good end of WrestleMania, in at least 10 years. And do it at the expense of Roman Reigns of all people. That's not, I hate to use the word equity again, but the amount of goodwill created is not something that is going to be easily disposed of. And I think that there is this thing of those of us who love Roman Reigns, and I'm a Bloodline guy. You want to believe that there's a chink in the armor. You want to believe that this was a bad decision. But I don't see how. Cody has been headlining live event after live event after live event before he was champion and now as the champion. People are there to see him. They're losing their minds for him. They're asking him to be a part of the most important days of their lives, whether it's a wedding, whether it's some kid who wants to be, just have Cody be a part of his life. I just, the idea that we're not ready to go on, and I think we are. I don't think it's a well thought out argument. It might just be an emotional argument, and that's okay too. But I don't think Cody is in any danger of losing steam anytime soon. And you have to allow for that steam to rebuild. You know what I mean? Like, Cody just got the biggest win. I mean, if it's not the biggest win in the history of the business, it's the second biggest win behind only Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker streak. There's really not much more you could do to make a guy than have him beat Roman Reigns. I just don't see it changing for Cody anytime soon. I think for the first time in I don't know how many years and years and years and years, you have a good guy that is a traditional good guy that's going to be able to lead the company, and people are going to be here for it, and people are going to be cheering for it. I think that's what we're looking at. I also think, and this is another conversation about Cody, people are talking about the title and whether it's going to be redesigned. One of the favorite things that Cody has ever done amongst the fan base is when he won the Intercontinental Championship and he was able to get the old design back. There's something about those late 80s, early 90s designs, whether it's the Tag Team Championship, the Intercontinental Championship, or the WWE Championship, that it is universally everybody's favorite design. Everybody loves that era of belts. I love that era of belts. And so, there are people that are hoping, thinking, assuming that Cody's going to get the WWE Universal or Undisputed, I believe it's called the Undisputed WWE Championship now. The Undisputed WWE Championship redesigned. We saw the new tag titles debut, which were on Raw, the World Tag Team Championship that appears to take design inspiration from the WWE World Heavyweight Championship and the Women's World Championship. And then on SmackDown, A-Town Down Under received the new WWE Tag Team Championship titles, which draw inspiration from those original SmackDown Tag Team Championship titles, but those obviously drew inspiration from those late 80s, early 90s Tag Team Championship, the titles that Demolition held, the titles that the Hart Foundation held, the titles that the Legion of Doom held. And I mean, and you can see it in the sort of shape of the plate and everything. I think it's really, really cool. When it comes to Cody's title, I don't personally think that it should be redesigned. If it did, I'd be fine with it. If you throw a winged eagle on there, I'd be, I'm never going to complain about a winged eagle. But the reason that I don't think it should be redesigned is because I think that Cody's accomplishment is that he beat Roman Reigns. And I think that every time Cody holds that title up, every time Cody wears that title around his waist, every time you see that title, you should be reminded that Cody is the one guy on the entire roster that could beat Roman Reigns. And in order to do that, I think it should look like the title that Roman Reigns held. I think that you've got many, 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 many months of credibility in that specific title belt because it's the one that Roman held, and now Cody's holding it. Eventually, we'll get past it. Eventually, Cody will define that title as his own. But for right now, there's just so much je ne sais quoi about the fact that he took it from Roman Reigns that I don't really want it redesigned. I want Cody to walk out reminding people that what used to be Roman's now belongs to Cody, that Cody not only finished his story, but fulfilled the promise that he made. That said, I love the tag title redesign, so we'll see. Obviously, it's fun because Triple H is a belt guy. Triple H likes championships. He has championships in his office. He has a collection of them. So this idea that he's the one whose hands are on when it comes to, approving designs and whatnot. At least that's what I'm assuming. It's an exciting time. It's really, really cool. A couple of news and notes before we get into the emails. It's always a bummer to hear about talent releases, and WWE released a few this week. You have Zion Quinn, who was in NXT for a while and then was part of the WWE draft last year. He was in the free agent pool, I think. He was last seen. He was one of the guys who Braun Breaker beat in short order on SmackDown. But Zion Quinn released. Xia Li released. I love Xia Li. I think she's an awesome human being. I think she's a great pro wrestler, just in terms of like the character. She's strong. I feel like there's more for Xia Li to do, and I hope she gets the opportunity to do it. Indus Sheer, which is kind of a surprise going away. I mean, Veer will always be remembered for the fact that for many, many weeks on Monday Night Raw, we heard that Veer was coming. Eventually he came, and now he's gone. But I do think that they're just such big galoots that I feel like Indus Sheer could be an asset elsewhere. And then the biggest surprise of the releases was Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal, of course, who we last saw at the beginning of January, first in that segment with The Rock when The Rock returned. And then when Seth Rollins and Jinder Mahal had their match on Raw. And I mean, I thought that it's a shame because I thought that Jinder kind of knocked it out of the park in his promo that The Rock interrupted. Like, he did more with that little bit of TV time than I think most people would ever kind of be able to do. I'm a Jinder Mahal guy. You know that for a long time I've requested that no one hinder Jinder. I think that that's the worst thing that you could do. And I don't think Jinder will be hindered at this point. I think there are a lot of places for him to go. I think, AEW is always a possibility. But I think really, when you look at Jinder Mahal, if I'm Jinder, I'm going to look at what Matt Cardona did. I'm going to look at what Drew McIntyre did. I'm going to look at what Cody Rhodes did. I'm going to go, you know what? There is this level of appreciation for me. I am totally devoted to my physique. There is fan support, and I am a former WWE champion. Whether that's used as a troll or not, it's 100% true, and he had a run. So I think that there's a lot that he can do. TNA is obviously making themselves known. I think TNA is pretty smart in not locking people down as much, in the sense that, like, when a superstar becomes a free agent, TNA is a stop that they can make, but while they're doing stuff with TNA, they can also do stuff over in New Japan. They can do stuff over here. They can do stuff over there. Nick Nemeth did it. And then you turn on TNA Rebellion over the weekend, and not only do you have Shawn Merriman, they said lights out Shawn Merriman. It was a swerve, though, because not only do you have Shawn Merriman getting involved, but Santana from LAX makes his return to TNA, and I love that for him. I think it's the perfect spot for him to really kind of show everybody what he's capable of as a single star. But then at the end of the night, the lights went out, and here's broken Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy back in TNA. Of course, broken Matt was invented in TNA. There's not too many gimmicks that are so good that they were created in TNA of all places and were able to make their way. Broken Matt was created in TNA and was able to make his way from TNA to Ring of Honor to WWE to AEW, and now it's back to TNA. Now, Matt didn't stay broken in all those scenarios, but Broken Matt showed up in all of those organizations. So now Broken Matt is back to the place where Broken Matt was born. I think that full circle journey is awesome. But I think TNA could be a great place for Jinder. I think the lights going out and the lights coming back on and seeing Jinder Mahal there to challenge Moose, I think that would be a great spot. I think GCW would be a great place for Jinder Mahal. You know, you look at the landscape, and I believe Matt Cardona just went down with some kind of pectoral surgery that he'll be out for several months. Now, I believe that Jinder, excuse me, I believe that Jinder might have a 90-day non-compete, but still, if you can get in there and be that guy, that WWE superstar, that antithesis to everything that's going on these indie shows, and be that heel, I think Jinder is in a perfect position to do that. And I think if played right, Jinder can really show what his value is. I mean, Jinder could do anything, right? I think if you look, Maximum Male Models at the moment are doing it as well as anybody that I've seen. Maximum Male Models are just popping up places. Mansoir and Marseille as a team, you know, they did some indie gigs. Then they show up on Maven's YouTube channel. Then, over the weekend, they showed up in SGW. Do you know about SGW? Soft Ground Wrestling. They went to Uganda. So these folks in Uganda, they've set up a ring, but they don't have a real ring. They basically set up posts and ropes on this kind of soft, muddy area. And they've created, that's why it's called Soft Ground Wrestling. Because I think they go barefoot and they wrestle like on a mud ground with posts and ropes around them. And they put the videos out online, and it's caught a lot of fire on the internet. It's become kind of a global thing, which I think is remarkable and amazing, and shows you the power of professional wrestling. You know, they always say that WWE's appeal is a global appeal, because you can speak any language in the world and you can understand the fight that's going on in the ring. Well, that is the same thing for stuff happening outside of the United States. That when you see this soft ground wrestling and the effort that's being put in, and the fact that they're actually trying to create characters and trying to tell stories, and with a budget of $0, trying to put in whatever production value they can, it's an appealing thing. It's really, really cool. And the fact that Marseille and Mansoir, the Maximum Male Models, went down there. The videos are all over the internet. Look it up. The fact that they went down there to Uganda, of all places, to do this thing is, like, to me, so impressive. Speaks so highly of their intelligence, of how important it is in sports entertainment to just get eyeballs. That's all it is. Just get eyeballs. Be where the people are looking. And think outside the box. That's what they're doing, and I think it's already paying off and going to continue to pay off for those guys. Genius move. If you think the same as me, if you think differently, then go ahead and email notsamwrestling@gmail.com. That's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address. And let's go to the emails. Ultra Boy wants to know, I know you say that Cody is Batman and Seth is his Joker. Yes. But I wanted to challenge that idea, because to me, Cody is Spider-Man and Randy will be his Venom. When they eventually feud, let me explain. Cody may have a family heritage like Bruce Wayne, but he's much more similar to Peter Parker. They both aren't the strongest or more powerful, but they will fight for their loved ones, for their city, and do whatever it takes to fight for the right cause. And Randy is like Eddie Brock, the anti-hero, the person that you never really know. I mean, I think that you just think that Randy is like Venom because he's a viper. And there's venom running through his veins. If you ask me, Seth is like the Joker, but Roman isn't Batman, so I decided Seth is dead. Yeah, I mean, you're just making up superhero things, okay? Like, the Cody as Batman and Seth is the Joker is there to establish and set up and describe their relationship. If you want to describe Cody's relationship with Randy Orton, you can. People are going to have more than one rival. And you could argue that Randy and Cody are always connected. But I mean, their relationship probably would be more like Eddie Brock and Peter Parker in the sense that they knew each other before. There's a whole, but like, I mean, Seth and Cody to me are forever linked. And that came back to WrestleMania, where ultimately they will fight again, but they need each other. Look at the end of Christopher Nolan's Batman movie. I think we're destined to fight forever. There is this acknowledgement that without Joker, there's no Batman. Without Batman, there's no Joker. That is the relationship between Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. And why is Seth Rollins the Universal Champion or the Undisputed Champion right now, ultimately? Has a lot to do with Seth Rollins. They're forever linked. I don't know. You could talk about, it's not one or the other. You could say, okay, the same way that Cody is like Batman and Seth is like the Joker, could you also say that Cody is like Spider? Because Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider and shoots web. But I don't think Cody has a Peter Parker vibe at all. At all. I mean, Peter Parker is just a good guy who got bit by a spider. It happened, like, here's why Cody Rhodes is like Batman, not Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a superhero because of something that happened to him. Had he not got bitten by a radioactive spider, Peter Parker would not dedicate his life to fighting crime. Peter Parker would not try to clean up New York City had he not been bitten by a radioactive spider. Cody Rhodes chose to take the path. And as a matter of fact, there was every reason for Cody Rhodes not to do it. The only reason Cody Rhodes is fighting the bad guys now is because he worked tirelessly for the privilege of getting to do it. The same way Batman was like, you know what? I'm just going to dedicate myself to becoming a rich ninja with all the technology in the world, and I'm just going to fight crime. That's Cody in deciding, like, no, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to work harder than anybody so I can come back and be the man in WWE. Nobody placed him in this position. Peter Parker was placed in his position by the spider. You see what I'm saying? Avic writes in, what's the haps from London? WWE finally got rid of those horrendous 10 pence looking tag belts. They did look like a 10p piece. Question is, which scenario do you see most likely for Money in the Bank? Okay, I like this question. Sammy wins the briefcase in Canada and finally cashes in down the road, calling his shot first as he is a babyface. Gunther wins, cashes in Berlin, calling his shot if he comes back. Not every babyface has to call his shot, okay? Not like CM Punk didn't call his shot. You don't have to call your shot if you're a babyface. C, Drew beats Damian in Glasgow. Damian wins Money in the Bank a second time. Punk beats Drew at SummerSlam. Drew attacks Punk. Damian cashes in on Punk. D, what you think will happen as of now? I don't know, dude. I think of those scenarios, Gunther winning is the most likely. I think, like, Sammy literally just beat Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. If they also have to give him the Money in the Bank, then why would you don't give somebody a win over Gunther at WrestleMania and then also Money in the Bank? Like, how much do you have to give this guy? That's like Cody Rhodes year one. I mean, you're Damian having to win the Money in the Bank briefcase a second time and then cashing in on Punk. Like, it would just be like, ugh, like, we just saw this. Are we just, like, recycling stuff? So, I mean, Gunther winning is probably, and I don't know if he'll cash in Berlin. I don't know when he'll cash in, but Gunther winning of those three options is the most appealing to me. Raj writes in from Queens, I never liked the idea of putting an active member of the roster into the Hall of Fame. I think I'm with you on that. At first, I didn't like the idea of Heyman going into the 2024 class. I thought it was too early. However, with the way the Bloodline saga is going and Roman's eventual turn to babyface, I think it makes perfect sense. First, Roman was humble and acknowledged his wise man and inducted him into the Hall of Fame. Then, Heyman had one of the best, if not the best speeches at the Hall of Fame. It's probably the best Hall of Fame speech ever. reminding new and old fans how revolutionary he was. So what you're saying is everything counts, which is true, and that Paul Heyman going in and Roman inducting him, and that level of appreciation that we then feel for Paul Heyman and in turn Roman Reigns adds to this idea that we'll feel good about both of them being baby faces down the road when Roman returns. I don't think that's a bad thought. Yeah, it is interesting. In an era when everything counts, putting somebody into the Hall of Fame that's an active member of the roster does hit differently. And it is something we should discuss differently. Simone writes in, hey, Sam, Simone from Belgium here. I love that. I hope you and your family are doing great. Kudos to Solo for mouthing now you do to the fans chanting, we want Roman. Love that. Now a not so wild speculation. Yeah, now you do. That is great. I don't think AJ and LA Knight are done yet. They're 1-1. Now it's time for LA Knight to fly across the ocean to smash AJ with a chair during his title match to fuel the hatred between each other. This will all culminate in a final match in Saudi at King and Queen of the Ring. And I think it should be a Hell in a Cell. LA Knight has proven himself over and over again in the last year. And the only thing he misses in this run is a great cell match. After that, there'll be no reason to keep the megastar's waist beltless. Well, you have to figure out what belt you're talking about. You can't, everybody deserves a championship, right? Everybody. So, I think the idea of AJ Styles, because AJ Styles, like Cody's first undisputed WWE championship defense ending in interference, I think would be a letdown to a lot of people. I think Cody versus AJ needs to be just a solid, great match with Cody overcoming this bad guy. I think it's more intriguing to me if AJ and LA Knight are both in the King of the Ring tournament and then they're in the finals together. So the finals, maybe they get drafted to two separate rosters. Don't forget the draft is happening. So maybe you draft, you keep AJ on SmackDown because he's facing Cody, and you draft LA Knight to Raw, but they're both in the King of the Ring tournament. So we finally get the last LA Knight AJ Styles match, the rubber match, Raw versus SmackDown, LA versus AJ, and then LA Knight can beat AJ to become the King of the Ring. That might be, and it would give him a title, not around his waist, but on his head, he'd be, the king. I don't think he'd have to call himself the king. I don't think he'd have to wear a crown. But LA Knight winning the King of the Ring and beating AJ in the finals is probably the way I would go with your scenario. Caden writes in, what do you think about the idea of WWE having an NWO Bloodline sort of faction? So far sounds bad. We already have Solo and Tama Tonga and Paul Heyman. We could see it Money in the Bank. The Usos go against Solo and Tama, and they keep saying third man like Bash at the Beach 96, and it's Jacob Fatu. Then we see Roman eventually come back with the Usos as a Wolfpack situation. Well, wouldn't the Usos and Roman be NWO Hollywood? The Wolfpack would be Solo, would be the new guys. And have the two Bloodline feuding all the way to WrestleMania, then adding members like Nia Jax, Naomi, and even Zilla. And dude, no, here's the problem. A Bloodline Civil War is a great idea. I love the idea of Roman and the Usos versus Solo, Tama, and whoever a third, whether it's Jacob Fatu, whether it's somebody else, that's all good. But this idea of going all the way and you being like, hey, remember when the NWO got really bad? We should do that to the Bloodline. Like, that didn't work for the NWO. That's looked at as when the NWO lost all their steam. So if you're going to repeat stuff, it should not be stuff that was bad. It should be stuff that was good. And then we could do a finger poke of doom where Roman Reigns pokes Solo on his chest and is able to pin him for the title. No. Andrew writes in, love your work. Got an email for you because I think it's going to be a while before you hear this again. I think you're going to like it, and I think you might find this pretty damn cool. I'm a sucker for that. We're a couple of weeks removed from WrestleMania, and I've had time to reflect. in the moment, the last few minutes of WrestleMania 40 were arguably the greatest ever. Yeah. But a few days later, I thought what you thought before the show. Having run-ins from Cena and Austin didn't make much sense. However, Austin made more sense than Taker, which is what we got. Not necessarily. It would be like seeing Batman at the end of the Avengers Endgame. No. Yeah, that would be cool, unexpected, and surprising too, but after the movie, you'd say, why the F was Batman there? But then even more in the past, in the days past, and I realized it's pro wrestling. Sometimes it doesn't have to make sense, and you just got to enjoy the moments. And it's moments like the WrestleMania 40 ending that make us love wrestling. I don't agree with you at all, Andrew. I agree with you that the moments are great, but it not making sense at all, I totally disagree with. Batman is a DC character. The Avengers is a Marvel franchise. So The Undertaker wouldn't be like Batman coming into the Avengers. It would be like if, like, I don't know, who's a WCW guy that never showed up in WWE? Are there any left? Like it would be like if Lodi showed up or something, or like it would be like if Sabu showed up. And be like, what does Sabu have to do with this? He was an ECW guy. This makes no sense. Well, yeah, but it's cool to see Sabu. That's not what we got. What I think is that ultimately, The Undertaker has always been the purveyor of what's right and just in the WWE locker room. Everything we've heard about The Undertaker on screen and off screen is wrapped around this idea that he is there to make sure that what should happen happens and what's right happens. Everybody has heard the story about WrestleMania 14, and people were worried that Shawn Michaels wasn't going to do business because he was problematic, Shawn, at the time. And they said that The Undertaker was wrapping his fists in Gorilla so that Shawn knew that if he tried anything funny, The Undertaker would make sure that the right thing happened. Everybody's heard the wrestlers' court stories where The Undertaker is like the judge or whatever. Everybody knows this stuff. So Seth Rollins, weeks in advance, setting up that this was bad for the locker room, that the reason Seth is on Cody's side is because it's what this locker room needs. This locker room cannot have the bloodline. Because he didn't want Cody to pick Roman. He wanted Cody to pick him. He doesn't want Cody to be the Universal Champion. But he wants even less for Roman to have that title hostage because it's bad for the locker room. So who is the ultimate guy to make sure that the locker room is taken care of? Who is the locker room leader? The Undertaker. And that's who you saw at WrestleMania. CL writes in, first, I got back into WWE in an odd way after Bray Wyatt's passing. I dug into who he was and the storylines he helped develop, and boom, I was sucked back in after 20 years away. Even post-mortem, Bray Wyatt is making a huge difference. Okay, the meat of my email. I immediately thought that Taker popped up to chokeslam The Rock because The Rock kept saying and cursing to Cena, get out of my ring. Okay, that's another one. I'll buy that. Well, I think most fans would agree that WrestleMania is Taker's stomping ground. And so he showed up almost as if summoned by The Rock, calling it his ring to remind The Rock who Mania belongs to in the annals of pro wrestling history. He said something to The Rock as he pointed his finger at him post-chokeslam, and I can only speculate it was something like, this is my ring and don't you forget it. Speculative? Yes. But to my wife, who is new to pro wrestling, yes, she likes the storylines, athleticism, and muscles. She thought this explanation made sense. I love the podcast and your humility and owning what you get wrong. P.S. Seeing as I came back due to Bray Wyatt's death, I sincerely hope Bo Dallas comes back in some character his brother created. Well, I keep seeing those Uncle Howdy hints. But yeah, I mean, even more so than WrestleMania, just the fact that, historically, the WWE and the ring is the Undertaker's yard. So when The Rock's saying this is my ring and Undertaker's saying, no, this is my yard. I think that I would add your theory and my theory together to create a super theory. Poncho writes in, sup, Sam? I'm Poncho, 9th time emailer here. I'm glad you've been counting. I wonder did they all get on the air? I strongly believe. And if your email doesn't get on the air, do you still count that as an email sent? If a tree falls in the woods, I strongly believe that when or if the OG bloodline reunites to fight the new blood, don't say the new blood, say the new bloodline. Again, we're going back to terrible things that happened in WCW. The New Blood was the worst. The Millionaires Club versus the New Blood was a hideous time in professional wrestling. Do not call this new bloodline the New Blood. Sami Zayn has to be involved in some shape or form. Man, that would be very appealing. I know he's not blood, and I know he has nothing to do with the new bloodline and possibly with The Rock's involvement. However, Sami was a fundamental part in what made the bloodline peak around the end of 2022, 2023. I dare to say the bloodline didn't elevate him. He elevated the bloodline. I would definitely say, no, the bloodline definitely elevated him, but his story also elevated the bloodline. Both are true. He doesn't need to be a full member. I feel like this is going to lead to a big endgame. And also, we already had endgame. WrestleMania was already endgame, so don't keep saying endgame, please. Not you, but in general. I like this email, by the way, Pancho. Just a minute. Yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying. I think that there is this thought of if you had Solo, Tama, and say Jacob Fatu, and then you had Roman and the Usos, you've got your 3-on-3 right there. But if all of a sudden The Rock showed up to support Solo and his gang, then that's when you could have Jay come in and go, Oos, I found somebody. And Sammy's music hits. If Jay says, Oos, I found somebody, and Sammy comes out, I mean, I can't even picture how insane. I'm getting goosebumps. Goosebumps. They're under my shirt sleeve, I swear. Yeah, I would, yes. Kate writes in, or Rian, second time emailing, okay. Just wanted to say you made WrestleMania season awesome with your podcast and videos on YouTube. You really added a great perspective and hype to all the storylines along the road. This is not just a WrestleMania season podcast, bro. We'll be here all year. The main motivation for writing you was the R-Truth interview on your channel. Watching you tense up at every MF drop was hilarious. Thank you. That video is absolute gold. You gave everyone a glimpse into a side of truth that we don't get to see. Blessings to you and your family. Thank you, my friend. I do feel strongly about the live shows that I do. I think it's what separates our live podcast from any other live wrestling podcast. It's that if you watch the one we did with Rhea Ripley, you'll get a different side of Rhea Ripley. If you watch the one we did a year ago, you'll get a different side of Baron Corbin. If you watch the one we just put up, you'll get a different side of R-Truth. And I just don't think there's anything else like it right now. And I'm really proud of it. So, yeah, I appreciate that you said that because that is my intention. Mario writes in, hey, Sam, did WWE miss a huge match opportunity years ago for an Undertaker-Rock match at Mania? With the premise being The Rock bragging about besting Cena, Hogan, and Austin at Mania, now he has to conquer the Ultimate Challenge, the streak. Well, so you're saying if it's Hogan, Cena, and Austin, well, I don't know. That means it's got to happen post-WrestleMania. Well, you've only got 1 year. Like, so you're saying at WrestleMania 30, they could have done Rock versus Undertaker. No, I mean, I think if they're going to do Rock versus Undertaker, it would have had to be early on. I mean, I am not, The Rock coming back after he wrestled Cena. So WrestleMania 30 or beyond, The Rock coming back to wrestle The Undertaker, like, no. When these guys come back, I want to see them with newer guys. Like, because having The Undertaker, WrestleMania 30 or beyond, wrestle The Rock, WrestleMania 30 or beyond, becomes just this spectacle, and it's cool to see, but ultimately, who does it do anything for? No one. So, no, I don't think they missed the boat at all. That's a long one. it says upcoming draft, and we didn't talk enough about it. This is from Jeff. Listener since the Linendahl era, good for you, and enjoy each week. I thought about the upcoming draft. Recently, I was watching an interview with Detroit Lions wide receiver, who can list all 16 wide receivers drafted before him. Other NFL players are the same way. Why not take this concept to wrestling? When someone is drafted 40 or 50, they start a quest to beat everyone that was taken before them, as it was basically a personal insult that they were drafted as low as they were. This would be an excellent lower card moving to mid card story that doesn't revolve around a title, at least at the beginning, that fans can get behind. I think ideally it would be a heel in the role. Well, no, I think it would have to be a babyface. If it was a heel, they would have to lose all the time, right? Because they'd look dumb. This could be a way to bring Baron Corbin back to the main roster. I don't know, because the problem is that you're not going to get that high up. So best case scenario, you've got somebody that was drafted 40 that might get up to like 32. And what are they going to do? Be like, aha, you thought I was the 40th best. I'm actually number 32. You still stink, So, yeah, I mean, I think if you're a main eventer that gets drafted 7th, then you might be able to do that story of like, no, I should be number 1. I'm going to beat all these people, and they might be able to beat a lot of them. But if you're somebody that gets drafted low, you're not going to beat that many people. That's why you got drafted so low. So that's the only hang up I have. John, dear Sammy Softground, Mansoor and Masay are seemingly scheduled to go wrestle in Soft Ground Wrestling. And this is maybe the most shocking crossover since Rick Rude showed up on Nitro and Raw. Please discuss. I did. Good email, because I did discuss that, and I think it is absolutely awesome. Shea Boogie writes in, a new era has begun. So excited to see where this wild roller coaster will go. I have an interesting match I think we may get somewhere down the line. Bad Bunny versus Priest rematch for a championship. For the championship. Hear me out. Bad Bunny is, and Priest is a proud individual and lost to, here's the, like, no. I just, and we'll do one more email after this. The problem is that Bad Bunny should not be wrestling for the world championship. Like, I guess technically at one point he beat the champion. Bad Bunny should not be wrestling for the championship. The world champion Damian Priest should not be entertaining such requests. And, I mean, for the love of God, Bad Bunny certainly shouldn't be beating the champion. So, I just don't think it puts the parties involved in the best light. Like, why not have, Bad Bunny against somebody that he can either beat, or it makes sense, or there's a story there, Okay, Andrew from New York with the last email. I love the show, but I got to get something off my chest. I've grown increasingly frustrated with your reaction to listener emails. You're frequently rude and insulting towards people's ideas, often calling them stupid. And you always make sure to chastise people on air for writing long emails. Yeah. Other wrestling podcast hosts I listen to all read their emails with gratitude and respect toward their listeners who take time out of their day to write in and help make the show better. If people are nice enough, to write into your show, a great start would be to respond to them respectfully. Your ideas are often unique and insightful. That's why I love the show. But I'd love them even more if you were nice to people during your email segment. To put in wrestling terms, be a babyface, Sam, not a heel. Keep up the great work, brother. Best, Andrew. You know why my work is great, Andrew? Number one, I'll never be a real babyface. And number two, if every podcaster is like being super respectful to their emailers, listen to those email segments. I do it at the end of the show. Stop the show right before the email segment. This is why we do the email segment. We're having fun. We're roasting a little bit, okay? Let's not clutch our pearls here. I always do it with a giggle. And by the way, some ideas are dumb. Okay? If I can't express the fact, and then by the way, it makes it even sweeter when I get something wrong, right? Isn't it great when Sam, the guy who can't read somebody's email without making some kind of smart-ass remark, gets something wrong? Doesn't that feel good to hear? We all feel great after it. I get my comeuppance too. Don't worry about it. But Andrew, for the love of God, you're going to come into you want to talk about dumb emails. You're going to come in. You're going to come in to the last professional broadcaster's house and tell him how to broadcast? Andrew, what are we, crazy? I'm the GOAT. That'd be like going and telling Roman Reigns how he should be winning his matches. He doesn't need that. He's the one winning all of them. I'm the last professional broadcaster. But I appreciate the email, and I'm glad that you wrote in. I doubt I will change my general approach. I mean, look, you're telling me I got to be nice to everybody. I tell people every single week, don't write long emails, and then they write a long email. I'm supposed to just go, well, I said not to write a long email, but it's okay. I appreciate it anyway. It's never going to happen. What do you, like, people should just be able to do whatever they want. I just read whatever. Come on, Andrew. Get a hold of yourself, dude. Get a hold of yourself. I'm going to do one more just because that was absurd. Okay. Let's go to Lewis. This is, hi, Sam. Bo came across excellent in the Bray Wyatt documentary. If they all want to appear in their masks for the re-debut, I think that's cool. But to really connect with the characters, I want to see Bo without the mask. What are your thoughts? Well, I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't know, right? I think the idea is Uncle Howdy, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what it looks like on his own. I don't know what it was ever intended to look like. There is something to that. It's not the craziest thing in the world to say, because when Bray Wyatt first came back, that promo that everybody loves is when Bray got to go to the ring and just be himself and talk about his relationship with the fans and talk about all of that. So, I mean, it's certainly not the craziest thing in the world, but also, I love those characters so much. I don't know that I don't think, look, I don't know. I trust them to do what they do. The people who are around Bray are the ones that are still there, right? And they haven't made, again, this goes back to I do this. This is what I do. I'm not going to tell people who have been writing great stories how to write great stories. They've been doing great stories. There's no reason for me not to trust the people that are making these stories right now. I love horror movies. I love characters. I loved Bray Wyatt. I loved The Fiend. I loved the Burned Fiend. I don't personally think that the characters that Bray portrayed should come back as portrayed by somebody else right now, but there may also be a creative way to do that. I'm not like, never, I'm opposed to, I'm not. I'm interested to see where it goes. And I'm sure that you guys are too. I'm interested to see where this all goes. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. I'm glad that you're here with us. I'm glad that you're tuned in. Don't forget, later this week, we're going to go over Chapter 1 of The Final Boss. We'll see you then. Have a good one, everybody.